So you mentioned a Gibson 335 on the last video.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the story behind that one?
Well, the first bit of the story is, I suppose, how I got the money to pay for it. I took a teaching job first at a local school, Felton Fleet School, a private school. And I was teaching kids between the ages of 8 and 11. And it wasn't easy because you're going right back to... I mean, it's easy because you're not stretching yourself. But had its drawbacks, you know. If you start teaching at that level too much, you start playing at that level. So it doesn't do anything to improve you, you know.
Yeah.
If you're pushed a bit, then you learn something as well as your students learning.
Yeah.
And that's always a nice way. I did learn a couple of things there, though. There was a lot of dyslexic kids, quite a few who wanted to play. And dyslexic people are generally quite musical, quite arty. But they can't read it when you write it down.
Yeah.
So I just used to... for about 6 months, I tried the normal way. And I was thinking there must be something different in this. So I just started playing to them. I'd play at 3 notes. And I'd tell them at the start of this, I'm not going to talk to you anything in this lesson, but you're going to learn. So I'd play the 3 notes and then I'd wait. And then they'd get the idea that they had to play the same 3 notes.
Yeah, that's a bit out of the box.
You have to be sometimes, don't you? So then they'd start play the 3 notes and I'd add another note on and we'd play that. Not scales, but melodies. And that's the way I taught them. And I'd just show them my hand playing the chord. And they'd hear it and they'd see it and then they'd try to do it.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't give them any explanation. They'd try and play it with the wrong fingers. And I'd just let them go.
Yeah.
Because eventually they turned it around. And then their acceleration after the first 6 weeks was faster than the ones who were reading it. Because they'd actually made the ear to finger connection, not worried about anything else in the middle, you know. But I can tell you a funny story about working at Felton Fleet School. And that's about the head of music there. He was a bloke called Chris, lovely guy. But he was one of those teachers who'd been to school, been to university and went back to school.
Yeah.
So he wasn't really much a man of the world, you know? And one day he said to me, "Oh, Dave," he said, the caretaker has been round sweeping up round the back of the classrooms, and he said, "Oh, he found some cigarette ends outside your window." I said, "Yeah, well, just tell him he can have them. I finished with them." And I left it at that. And nothing more was said. Anyway, I earned a fair amount at Felton Fleet, and then a lady rang up and said, "Oh, you're teaching a friend of my son's at Felton Fleet. He's just gone to this school. He wants some lessons. Would you be prepared to go and teach at another school in Leatherhead, a school called St. John's?" And I said, "Well, I'm not prepared to go there just for one pupil, you know.
Yeah.
It's not very economic for me. But if you ask the head of music there how many boys he thinks would be interested in learning, and it comes to half a day or a bit more, then I'll try it for a term and we'll see how we go."
Yeah.
So she asked and they said yes, and they had like 12 kids wanted to learn. And this was aged then from 11 through to 18.
Oh, right.
So I went there and I worked there. And I think on the second term, I used to invoice the term directly to the parents. Through each parent, I'd write them a little invoice and they'd pay up front for the whole term.
Mm-hmm.
And I suddenly had this bit of money. So I went off to a shop in Croydon called Rock Bottom. And downstairs was filled with all the new guitars and the new drums and the new everything. And upstairs they had a vintage room. And it was full of old Gibsons. They'd send a buyer to the States and they'd buy like a container load of old Gibsons and Fenders. Second-hand ones, yeah. I went upstairs and I played maybe 6 or 7. And I think the second one I played I really liked. And then I played the third and I went back to the second, and I played the fourth and I went back to the second. Mm-hmm. And I kept going back to this one and it sounded, I don't know why, it was a little bit of the feel of it, but mostly the sound of it, I think. It just sounded sweet. The sustain was great. It was a lucky one. I took out my hard-earned cash and I paid £820 for this Gibson, Sunburst Gibson. And it wasn't the prettiest and it wasn't the cheapest, but that's the one I decided on. I had enough money to pay for it. So I bought it, and as I was leaving the shop, the guy wrote me the receipt and I paid everything. And I said, "What year is it?" And he took a quick look at the serial number on the back of the headstock. And he said, "Oh, it's 1976. Okay, well, this was 1994 or something like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it didn't matter to me how old it was because that was the one that sounded right. I got a case with it, but it wasn't an original Gibson case. It was just a case that fitted a 335.
Yeah.
And I went away happy. And a few weeks later, I was playing it at a jam. There was this Scottish guy there, and he always turned up with a Gibson of some sort. And he said, "Oh, Dave, that's a new thing for you, isn't it?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Let me have a look." So during the break, he had a look and he went, "Oh, you've got an old one." I said, "Yeah, the bloke told me 1976. He said, "No, it's older than that. There's only 5 numbers in the serial number, but it does start 76. But that's a Fender way of marking.
Yeah.
Gibson's is all over the place." He said, "I'll check it out and let you know." And the week later, he came back to the same jam that I was running at Rockies in Common. And he said, "Well, Dave, your Gibson is from 1962.
Shit.
Yeah. So I didn't ring Rock Bottom and tell them.
Nope.
No,
No
I just kept it quiet. If they're watching this video, they'll know now.
Well, too late for that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, damn it. So you which amp do you have by then?
I was playing two different amps by then. For inside small gigs, I had a Musicman. Was a 65 watt 210 Musicman, and it was great for at lower volumes, really clean, really sweet. And in that band, I wasn't overdriving a lot. And then for outside, I had a Hiwatt 100 custom, but it was a bit different than the normal things. It had a hand-built oak case, and there was a rumour that there were two of these oak cases. I bought it not from ABC Music, but from a guy I met in there. I was looking for amps, a big one, and he was in there looking for a guitar, and we got talking. And he said, I've got a Hiwatt at home, but it's a bit of a weird one. It's not black and Tolex on the front. It's a wooden case. I said, I don't mind. So went to his house, was quite close, had a look, bought it. It was great. Couldn't ever crank it right up, except on a couple of outside gigs. But when we played outside, I used to play that and played it through a 8x10 Marshall cabinet. So 8 10-inch speakers. And yeah, that moves some air. Yeah, you could feel it on your trousers when you cranked it up. And I bought that speaker cabinet from Dr. James, who became Dr. James of the All Stars band.
Nice. Yeah.
So using two different amps. Now, I eventually sold the amp to a bass player called Richard Sadler, and he had it for bass.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well, it would stay clean a long time, that Hiwatt. You know, it wouldn't drive. My speakers helped it. They were a bit underpowered for the amp. And they weren't new. They were very well-worn cones.
Yes, it's
maybe with
a bit.
With a few small tears in them and stuff over the years. But yeah, that I'm glad I'm not carrying it around now.